Okay, let's finish chapter 6. Remember, they had just finished up at the dentist. That wasn't so bad, was it, Peter? My mom said. Yeah, it could have been worse, I admitted. We headed for Bloomingdale's. That's a store where we get our shoes. There are 5 salesmen in the children's shoe department. 2 of them my mother doesn't like. She thinks they don't measure my feet carefully. That all they care about is selling shoes, even if they don't have the right sizes in stock. The other ones my mother thinks is okay, but there's one she likes a lot. His name is Mr. Berman. I like him too because he's funny. He usually makes believe that the right shoe goes on the left foot, or that Fudge's shoes are really mine, or... Anyway, when Mr. Berman waits on us, buying shoes is almost fun. Today, Mr. Berman spotted us right away. He always remembers our name. Well, if it isn't the Hatcher boys. In the flesh, I told him. Fudge opened his mouth for Mr. Berman. See, all gone. His teeth, my mom explained to Mr. Berman. He knocked out his 2 front teeth. Well, congratulations, said Mr. Berman. That calls for a celebration. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 2 lollipops. He handed one to me and one to Fudge. Oh, Fudge says lolly. Mine was root beer flavored. I hate root beer, but I thanked Mr. Berman anyway. I'll save it for later, I told him, handing it to my mother. She put it into her purse. Fudge got a lolly lemon. He ripped off the paper and started sucking on it right away. Now then, what'll it be, boys? Mr. Berman asked. My mom answered, brown and white saddle shoes for Fudge and loafers for Peter. Okay, Peter, let's see how those feet have grown. I slipped out of my old shoes and stood up. I stuck my left foot into Mr. Berman's foot measure, and then he turned it around and I put my right foot in it. That's another reason why my mother thinks Mr. Berman's good at selling shoes. He measures both feet. Some other salesmen only measure one. My mom says feet can be different sizes, even on the same person. And it's important to make sure that the size fits the biggest foot. What color loafers, Peter? Mr. Berman asked. Brown, I said, same as my old ones. When Mr. Berman went back to the store to look for shoes for me, and my mother noticed a hole in the top of my sock. Oh, Peter, why did you tell me you had a hole in your sock? I didn't know I had one, I said. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. It's my sock, Mom. Why should you be embarrassed? I asked. Well, it looks terrible. I mean, to come shopping for shoes with a hole in your sock, that's just awful. Can't you hide it a little? Where am I going to hide it? Try to get the hole in between your toes so it doesn't show, my mother said. I wiggled my sock around, trying to rearrange my hole. My mother was sure worries about silly things. Mr. Berman came out with 2 pairs of loafers. He likes to try on different sizes to make sure I'm getting the right one. One pair was way too big. The other one fit fine. Wear 'em or wrap 'em up? Mr. Berman asked my mother. Wrap 'em, please, she said. We'll wear the old ones home. I have never been allowed to wear shoes home from the store. Don't ask me why, but my mother says always has the new pair wrapped up and I can't wear them till the next day. When I was finished, Mr. Berman untied Fudge's shoes and measured his feet. Brown and white saddle shoes, my mother reminded him. Mr. Berman went into the back and returned with 2 shoe boxes. But he opened the first box and Fudge saw the saddle shoes. He said, No! No what? My mother asked him. No shoes, Fudge said. He started kicking his feet. Oh, don't be silly, Fudge. You need new shoes, my mother told him. No, 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 he hollered. Everybody in the shoe department looked at us. Here's a perfect size, Mr. Berman told Fudge, holding up the shoe. Wait till you see how nice these new shoes feel. Fudge kicked some more. It was impossible for Mr. Berman to get the shoes on his feet. He screamed, no shoes, no shoes, no, no, no. My mother grabbed hold of him. He was wiggling all around. He managed to give Mr. Berman a kick in the face. Lucky for him, Fudge had only socks on. Now look, Fudge, my mom said, you must get new shoes. Your old ones are too small. So what kind do you want? I don't know why my mother bothered to talk to him like he was a regular person, because when Fudge gets himself into a temper tantrum, he doesn't listen to anything. By the time he had thrown himself onto the floor where he was by that time he had thrown himself onto the floor and was beating his fists against the rug. What kind do you want, Fudge? Because we're not leaving here till you get new shoes, my mother said, like she meant it. I figured we'd be there for the rest of the day, or maybe the week. How could my mother have been embarrassed over a little hole in my sock and then act like nothing much was happening when her other son was on the floor yelling and screaming and carrying on? I'm going to count to 3, my mother told Fudge, and then I want you to tell me what kind of shoes you want. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Fudge sat up. Like Peter's, he said. I smiled. I guess the kid really looks up to me. He even wants to wear the same kind of shoes as I do. But everyone knows you can't buy loafers for such a little tiny guy. They don't come in your size, Mr. Berman told him. Yes, 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 like Peter's, Fudge hollered. Mr. Berman held up his hands and looked at my mother as if to say, I give up. But my mother said, I have an idea. She motioned for me and Mr. Berman to come closer. I had a feeling that I wasn't going to like her idea, but I listened anyway. I think we'll have to play a little joke on Fudge, she said. What do you mean? I asked. Well, suppose Mr. Berman brings out a pair of saddle shoes in your size and... Oh, no, I said, you are not getting me to wear saddle shoes. Never. No, let me finish, my mother said. Mr. Berman can bring them out and you can try them on, and then Fudge will think that that's what you're getting. But when we leave, we'll take the loafers. That's mean, I say. You're taking advantage of him. Since when do you worry about that? My mother asked. Since now, I told her. Look, Peter, my mom said, checking her watch. It's 12 o'clock. I'm starved. Me too, I said. Well then, if you ever want to get some lunch, let's try my idea. Okay, I said. I sat back in my chair while Mr. Berman hurried to the stockroom again. Fudge looked up at me from his position on the floor. Like Peter's? He said. Yeah, sure, Fudge, I told him. Mr. Berman came back with a pair of brown and white saddle shoes in my size. I tried them on. Ugh, did they look ugly. See Peter's nice saddle shoes, my mother said. Now, Fudgy tries on his saddle shoes. Fudge let Mr. Berman put on his new pair of shoes. See, he said, like Peter's. He held up his foot. That's right, Fudge, I said, just like mine. You can sure fool little kids easily. Wear 'em or wrap 'em? Mr. Berman asked my mother while Fudge walked around in his new shoes. Wrap, of course. I wondered what my mother would tell Fudge tomorrow when I wore my new loafers. Oh well, that wasn't my worry. That was her idea. When Fudge was back in his old shoes and our package was ready, Mr. Berman gave my brother a striped balloon. He offered one to me, too. I refused. How could you think a person in 4th grade might want a store balloon? That wasn't so terrible, was it, Peter? My mom said as we left the store. Nah, it wasn't, I said. Well, it could have been worse, my mom said. Yeah, I suppose, I answered. We went to Hamburger Heaven for lunch. We sat in a booth. Fudge tossed his balloon around while my mother ordered for him and then for herself. I ordered my own lunch, a hamburger with everything on it and chocolate and a chocolate milkshake. Fudge was getting the kiddie special. That meant a hamburger without the bun, some mashed potatoes, and a side order of green peas. When our lunch was served, my mother cut Fudge's hamburger into tiny little pieces, which he shoved into his mouth with his fingers. And then she handed him a spoon and told him to eat his mashed potatoes. But instead of eating, he smeared them all over the wall. See, he said. I thought you told me he wouldn't behave like that anymore, I said to my mom. Fudgy, that's naughty. You stop it right now, my mother said. But Fudge just sang out, eat it or wear it, eat it or wear it, and he dumped the whole dish of peas all on his head. I laughed. I couldn't help it. He looked so silly there with the peas falling out of his hair. And when I eat and laugh at the same time, I choke. So I choked on my pickle, and my mom had to whack me on my back, which gave Fudge another chance to spread mashed potatoes all over the wall. That's when the waitress asked my mother if we wanted anything else. No, thank you, my mother said. We have more than enough now. She wiped off the wall with her napkin and told Fudge he was very, very naughty. Not me, Fudge said. Not me. Yes, you, my mother told him. Why can't you eat like Peter? See how nice Peter eats? Fudge didn't say anything. He just stuck his fork into his balloon, and it popped, and then he screamed, Oh, God, I want more balloon! I want more balloon! Oh, shut up, I told him. Can't you ever act like a human being? Oh, that's enough, Peter, my mother said. She should have slugged him. That would teach that brother of mine how to behave in Hamburger Heaven. We took a cab home. Fudge fell asleep on the way. He had his fingers in his mouth, and he made his slurping noise. My mom whispered to me, Our day wasn't that bad, was it, Peter? I didn't answer. I just looked out the taxi window and decided that I would never again spend a day with Farley Drexel Hatcher ever again. We'll do Chapter 7 tomorrow.